These women all beat the odds and defeated the monsters trying to kill them. But which one is the best? Tina Shepard from Friday the 13th Part 7? Sidney Prescott from the Scream franchise? Keep watching to find out who we've decided are the 15 best final girls in horror movie history. While the sequel to the hit 1997 slasher film, I Know What You Did Last Summer, isn't quite as good as its predecessor in a lot of ways, it still does plenty of things right. Most notably, it diversifies the once almost entirely Caucasian cast by adding Brandy Norwood, Mekhi Phifer, and Jennifer Esposito to its ensemble. Taking place exactly 1 year after the events of the original, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer features Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, Julie James, still reeling from the fisherman's killing spree. Norwood's character, Karla Wilson, is Julie's new best friend and confidant, becoming sensitive to her plight and helping her try to move on. When the two find themselves traveling to a tropical island for a much-needed vacation, Karla encourages Julie to let her guard down. Of course, people start dropping dead as soon as Julie relaxes, and it's Karla who tries to help Julie stay calm. Once the killer pursues Julie and Karla, the two become separated during one of the tensest chase scenes in modern horror history. Although Karla is feisty and tough, it's her ability to think fast that helps her avoid the killer and stay alive long enough to see her best friend once again. There have been over a dozen final girls throughout the Friday the 13th franchise, but none have left quite as big of a mark as Lar Park Lincoln's Tina Shepard in Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Born with telekinetic powers that she can't seem to contain, Tina spent her teenage years in a psychiatric institution after accidentally killing her father on the edge of Crystal Lake. When she's finally allowed to return to the site of the accident, she's overcome with so much guilt that she unintentionally resurrects Jason Voorhees. Despite her troubled upbringing, Tina is able to overcome any obstacle that stands in her way, whether it's physical or emotional. Using her powerful abilities, she electrocutes Jason, strangles him with a wire, and sets him on fire. But of course, it's not enough. In the film's emotional climax, Tina uses all of her energy to conjure her father's spirit, who delivers the final blow by dragging Jason's body into the depths of Crystal Lake once more. Thanks, Dad.
Jason. Where's Jason?
We took care of him.
Adam Wingard's 2011 slasher film, You're Next, certainly thought outside of the box when it came to its final girl. Erin Harson, played by Australian actress Sharni Vinson, is a young woman who accompanies her boyfriend on a trip to his family reunion. The family affair starts out harmless enough, but quickly turns into a bloodbath as masked killers descend on the family estate, picking off victims one at a time. That doesn't mean Erin is helpless, though. Far from it. In an exciting twist on the final girl trope, Erin reveals that she was raised in a survivalist compound where she learned advanced combat skills from her doomsday prepper father. As the killers close in around her, Erin rigs the house with a series of makeshift booby traps, and as they start to drop, she discovers that they might not be strangers after all. Vincent plays Erin with a quiet determination that sets her apart from her fellow final girls. Even when all hope seems lost, there's no doubt as to who will eventually come out on top in this deadly game of cat and mouse. Like the Friday the 13th franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street series is full of final girls. One of the most memorable is Lisa Wilcox's Alice Johnson, who first appeared in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Alice was the best friend of Dream Warriors protagonist Kristen Parker, who passed on her dream powers to Alice right before being killed by Freddy Krueger. Alice, who already had supernatural abilities of her own, became even stronger after receiving Kristen's power, making her the titular Dream Master. Alice gained the dream powers of Freddy's other victims as well, making her one of the most formidable opponents Freddy has ever faced. After defeating Freddy at the end of the fourth movie by making him look at his own reflection, Alice starts a relationship with fellow survivor Dan Jordan and ends up pregnant. In A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, Freddy returns to pick off Alice's loved ones in an attempt to be reborn in the body of her unborn son. Alice was originally set to be killed off in Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, leaving her son Jacob to be the main protagonist. However, the idea was scrapped and the character never reappeared, except during flashbacks in 2003's Freddy vs. Jason. When Jamie Lee Curtis decided to move on from the Halloween franchise after its second installment, the studio needed a new final girl to go up against Michael Myers. They found it in Danielle Harris's Jamie Lloyd, who was introduced in 1988's Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Jamie is the daughter of Curtis's Laurie Strode, who died off-screen in a car accident. Jamie is adopted by the Carruthers family, who, coincidentally, also live in Haddonfield. Over time, Jamie develops a psychic connection to her deadly uncle and is able to see through his eyes as he goes on his killing sprees. As in the previous films, bloody chaos ensues as Michael Myers tries to track down his long-lost niece.
Whoever you are, I have a big dog with me and he bites.
The end of Halloween 4 features one of the franchise's most shocking moments, as Jamie follows in Michael's footsteps by attacking her foster mom. Harris reprises her role as Jamie in Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, in which the mysterious man in black returns to free Michael from the clutches of the local police. Jamie also makes an appearance in Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, but she's played by a different actress and killed off early on. Jamie never reappeared in the live-action franchise. A name drop was originally written into Halloween H2O 20 years later, but it was cut from the final film. Happy Death Day is an underrated gem of a movie that combines the time loop structure of Groundhog Day with the self-aware slashing of Scream. The film wouldn't work nearly as well if it wasn't for Teresa Tree Gelbman, the lead character played by Jessica Roth. Tree finds herself stuck reliving her birthday over and over, doomed to be repeatedly murdered by a mysterious killer until she can figure out how to stop the cycle. Tree is one of the more cynical final girls out there, having become bitter following the untimely loss of her mother. However, her unfortunate predicament opens her up to making an emotional connection with Carter, her classmate and eventual boyfriend. Since Happy Death Day was a hit, its 2019 sequel, Happy Death Day to You, expanded the franchise by introducing parallel realities and having Tree's friends join her in looping through time. In an emotional storyline, Tree is reunited with a version of her mother that never passed away, forcing her to make an impossible choice. A third installment to the Death Day franchise is currently in the works, after a slight delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Neve Campbell wasn't the only star of Party of Five to dive headfirst into the horror genre. A year after Scream, Jennifer Love Hewitt starred as Julie James in 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer. Based on the 1973 novel of the same name, the film follows four friends who cover up a fatal car accident, only to find the past coming back to haunt them a year later. Hewitt's portrayal of Julie is still infamous in horror history, especially for that one particularly iconic scream.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Hewitt's performance was memorialized through plenty of parodies in film and television, but even though her acting was a little over the top at times, she still managed to be a nuanced, three-dimensional character. Hewitt returned as Julie James for I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, in which she once again becomes the fisherman's target during a vacation in the Bahamas. Every so often, a final girl comes along who's so influential that her character development spans decades. No hero is a better example of this than Sarah Connor from The Terminator. Originally portrayed by Linda Hamilton, Sarah first appeared in 1984's The Terminator as a damsel in distress whose future son is vital to the preservation of humankind. By the time T2 rolls around, however, Sarah is a hardened warrior and a total badass. After a departure from the franchise that lasted nearly 3 decades, Hamilton returned for 2019's Terminator: Dark Fate, serving as a mentor trying to protect her young protege from her destiny. While other actresses have also assumed the role of Sarah Connor, including Game of Thrones stars Emilia Clarke and Lena Headey, Hamilton's turn as the mother of the Resistance will always be the one most closely associated with the character. Her transformation from a weak and relatively defenseless young woman to a skilled fighter and expert marksman is one of the most satisfying character transformations in cinematic history. Upon her return to the franchise in Dark Fate, Hamilton easily resumed her role as the headstrong heroine. Although she's become slightly cold on the inside, the now 54-year-old Sarah still offers some much-needed warmth and advice to anyone who she thinks needs it. While other final girls on this list were fighting their way out of time loops or evading masked killers, Ashley Lawrence's Kirsty Cotton was doing battle with literal demons in 1987's Hellraiser. In the franchise created by author Clive Barker, Kirsty is a young woman who finds out that her family is in bed, literally, with a race of flesh-ending monsters known as the Cenobites. The Cenobites use a special puzzle box to travel between dimensions, and it's up to Kirsty to figure out how to use it to end their murderous rampage and send them back to where they came from.
No, don't do that.
Go to hell!
Lawrence reprised her role in the 1988 sequel, Hellbound: Hellraiser 2, had a cameo in the third installment, and returned as a supporting character in 2002's Hellraiser 6, Hellseeker. Kirsty's adventures have also extended past the silver screen. She most recently appeared in Boom Studios' Hellraiser comic series, set approximately 20 years after the events of the first movie. By issue 8, Kirsty has become a female version of Pinhead, while the original Pinhead has been restored to his human form. She's no Sidney Prescott, but Courtney Cox's Gale Weathers deserves a spot on this list, just for making it through 5 Scream movies alive. Even though her motives are sometimes dubious, the strong-willed journalist always finds a way to help deduce the identity, or identities, of the murderous Ghostface killer. Even though Sidney is usually the one who manages to land the final blow, she never could have done so in the first place without help from Gale and her eventual husband, Officer Dewey Riley. Gale is snappy and sarcastic, but she's also a crusader for justice, having fought on behalf of wrongfully convicted felon Cotton Weary. Actresses Brooke Shields and Janine Garofalo were offered the role of Gale before Cox was, but it's hard to imagine anyone else playing the character with the proper snark. Gale's latest appearance was in the 2022 take on Scream, and she's slated to play an important role in the upcoming Scream 6. The newest final girl to make this list is Deena Johnson, the protagonist of the Fear Street trilogy, played by Kiana Madeira. Based on the series of novels by Goosebumps author R.L. Stine, Fear Street follows Deena and her friends as they try to stop the ancient evil that's haunting their hometown. The first film is set entirely in 1994, but its 2 sequels feature flashbacks to grisly events in 1978 and 1666. Deena isn't your typical horror protagonist. She is both gay and a woman of color, making her existence all the more important. Deena is brave, passionate, resourceful, and determined to save the life of her girlfriend, who has been possessed by the evil that permeates their town. The main thing that sets Fear Street apart from other teen slasher films is the cast. Everyone pulls their weight, with no weak links in sight. Of course, Deena is definitely a highlight. The performances, the horror elements, and the fidelity to the source material make this particular horror trilogy a must-see. Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, is the first final girl from the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and definitely the most memorable. After she first stopped supernatural serial killer Freddy Krueger in 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy's arc continued for almost a decade. She returned as a supporting character in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and regained her lead status once again for Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Nancy experiences significant character development throughout the films, growing from a timid high schooler to a psychiatric intern who helps guide children in going through difficult situations. Langenkamp embodies an all-American girl-next-door vibe as Nancy, but it's nice to see her lighten up a little bit when she plays a fictionalized version of herself in the extremely meta New Nightmare. Rooney Mara played a reimagined version of Nancy in the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake, but it's Langenkamp that truly embodies the character. When Ridley Scott introduced the world to the terrifying xenomorph in 1979's Alien, he also debuted one of the most iconic women in the horror genre, Ellen Ripley. The first lieutenant of the Nostromo is always the smartest person in the room, but it'll take more than smarts to take down the extraterrestrial invader. Ripley was originally written to be played by a man, but the decision to cast Sigourney Weaver in the role made the character a trailblazing icon. Weaver helped launch one of the most successful sci-fi franchises in history, reprising her role in 1986's Aliens, 1992's Alien 3, and the often overlooked Alien Resurrection in 1997. Her performance in Aliens garnered Weaver both Academy Award and Golden Globe nominations for Best Actress, making her the 3rd horror actress in history to receive the honor. Weaver also served as a co-producer on the 3rd and 4th film installments of the franchise, and even though they were less successful critically, her performance was always on point. The character lives on in pop culture history, appearing in comic books, graphic novels, video games, and toy lines. It's nearly impossible to imagine the Scream franchise without Sidney Prescott, and it's equally difficult to imagine anyone other than Neve Campbell in the iconic role. After nearly becoming the final victim in a series of grisly murders, Sidney finds it impossible to escape her past, as numerous copycat killers surface to try and finish the job. Even though she finds her life becoming a horror film time and time again, she always refuses to allow herself to be a victim.
Not in my movie.
Over the course of 25 years, Sidney goes from terrorized high schooler to best-selling author to badass mother of 3. She's a survivor through and through. She may have been stabbed 4 times across 5 movies, but much like Ghostface, she just keeps getting back up. She's self-sufficient, self-sacrificing, and most of all, self-aware. Sidney is the final girl that all modern final girls are compared to nowadays, and it's easy to see why. Despite the numerous attempts on her life, Sidney is still compassionate towards others and always tries to find the light outside all of the darkness. There's a reason Scream is considered a contemporary classic. If Neve Campbell perfected our modern idea of the final girl, then Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode is responsible for creating the trope to begin with. Laurie was a final girl long before the term was invented, making her debut in 1978's Halloween and returning for several sequels thereafter. Laurie is another example of someone who has received significant character development through the years. She started out as a brave babysitter and grew up to be a tenacious survivalist. In the 2018 version of Halloween, a soft reboot of the franchise, Laurie is now a grandmother and finds herself constantly preparing for Michael Myers' inevitable return. Unfortunately, her precautions sometimes border on paranoia, causing a rift in her relationships with her daughter and extended family. Over the course of more than 40 years in Laurie's shoes, Curtis has never wavered in her intensity. She's always given it her all. Most recently in 2021's Halloween Kills. Curtis will appear as Laurie once again in 2022's Halloween Ends, which may quite possibly be her final outing in the role. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more SlashFilm videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.